Hi guys, I wanted to do a short video to show you kind of my process of cutting HTV vinyl with my Silhouette Cameo 3. For those of you that are beginners, HTV is heat transfer vinyl, and that is what I use for my t-shirts. So just quickly, this is my white HTV vinyl. You will see that one side has a very shiny glossy side, while the other side is more of a matte finish. The glossy side, when you're cutting, is going to go face down on your mat. This glossy side serves as a carrier sheet when you are pressing this vinyl onto your t-shirt. I'll explain that a little more later. This is my Cameo software on my laptop. I have my design ready to go. It is reversed, and that is very, very important for beginners to remember when you're cutting heat transfer vinyl, that when you go to cut it, the image has to be reversed. It must. I automatically do that myself, but as you'll see, when I go to cut this vinyl and I hit send, it will also ask me if I want to send it as is or if I want the image reversed. So I'm gonna set you up here. Hopefully you can see that well. I have you on my stand. So this is my Silhouette Cameo. As I said, this is the heat transfer vinyl. This is the shiny, shimmery, glossy side. I am going to put that face down on my mat. I'm going to line it up here so that it's straight. And this mat has been in use for quite some time, so it is not super sticky like it was when I first bought it. And just for the safety of the matter, I do use pieces of green painter's tape to hold down items that I'm cutting so that they don't slide on the mat. So I'm just going to tilt you up here real quick. So as you can see, my vinyl is shiny side down on the mat. I have my green painter's tape on the corners holding it down, and when I said I was lining it up, I placed it on the mat so that it fit in the grid where my image is set to cut. So the image that I'm cutting is 12 by 9, so I cut my vinyl 12 by 9 and I'm laying it on the mat where it should be, where the design is set to cut. When you go to load your mat into the Cameo or the Silhouette, you will see there is a line on your cutting mat telling you which way to put it in, and there are guidelines on here for where you're cutting. So when I go to slide this in, I'm going to try to line this up perfectly, and bear with me because I'm using one hand to do this right now. Get this in here. Sorry guys, I'm struggling with one hand. And you can keep adjusting it, but as you see, I have it in there and it is lined up with that mat. So once you have it in there, if I can get this, you will hit load and it pulls your mat in. I'm going to set you down here for just a second. We will go over to the laptop, and I have my settings here set to heat transfer smooth. It's going to cut, and I am using my auto blade. So I'm going to go down to the bottom here and hit send. And you will see this message that says heat transfer designs often need to be mirrored. Do you wish to send the design mirrored or send it as displayed on the screen? If I did not already have this image reversed or mirrored, I would hit send as mirrored and it would flip it for me. But since I already have it mirrored or reversed, I'm going to hit send as is. And then it automatically sends to the Silhouette and it's going to cut that vinyl for me. Okay guys, so that heat transfer vinyl is done cutting in the Silhouette. And basically what happens when it's done cutting is simply you don't hear it running anymore, and it slides out as far as it can basically, but it's still locked in until you physically tell the Silhouette to unload this sheet, and you do that by hitting unload. And it just pops it right out of the machine. So I actually want to cut that same exact transfer. I'm doing multiple shirts for my sisters. So I'm just going to remove this painter's tape. Pop that off real quick. And I'm gonna grab another piece of HTV, which I already pre-cut to the 12x9 length. And I'm gonna do the same exact thing with lining it up on the mat. And taping down those corners again. And then I'm going to send it back through. And one of the nice things about the silhouette is if you're cutting the same thing over and over again, it kind of saves you a step. I'm loading this in here, I'm hitting load. So that sheet has been loaded, and there's actually a feature on here that says repeat job. So if you're doing the same thing over and over again, you can hit that repeat job and it is going to pull it in and cut. So it's really neat that like I said, that saved me a few seconds from going over to my laptop. And you guys can set something to cut, and if it's going to take a while, you can walk away and go and do whatever. For example, between cutting the first sheet and the second sheet, I vacuumed my office while this was running. My office is up on the second floor. Meanwhile, everything else in the house, the kitchen and everything else is downstairs. So there are plenty of times when I'm working on projects where I'll set something to cut. If it's something that I'm comfortable is going to cut well and not have any issues, then I'll let it run. There are times when I'm working with very, very fine, intricate cuts that I kind of want to watch for the first time, and I won't do that. But for the most part, for projects like this, it's very simple. I can set it to cut and walk away. So we're going to let this cut, and then I'll come back and kind of show you guys my process of weeding the vinyl. Okay, so we have cut our sheets of vinyl. This is one of those sheets, and we're going to continue to leave that very shiny glossy side down. This is a tool that actually came with my silhouette. It is incredibly helpful. This pointy little hook here helps you pull up the vinyl, as you'll see. So I usually start on a corner. And I will advise you that I kind of pay attention and pull slowly. I mean, this stuff comes up pretty easy, and there's something about it that makes you just want to, it gives you this sense that it's coming up okay and you want to pull it quickly. But I suggest that you kind of pull it slowly and pay attention to how it's peeling up, because every once in a while, it doesn't happen frequently, but every once in a while you will see that the vinyl does not get cut the entire way through. So if I'm yanking this up, for example, very quickly, and let's say a little tiny piece on the side of this E has not cut, and I just yank it up, it's going to rip up that entire E. But if I'm pulling it slowly and paying attention, I can see that it did not cut the whole way through, and I can use an X-Acto knife to cut it where it should be. So I advise to pull it slowly, and sometimes, like that little piece, it just ripped before it could pull up. So that's fine. But just pay attention while you're removing the vinyl that's not going to be in use, so that you don't mess it up. So that's one section that we don't need. I'm going to go ahead and stop this and kind of move it into a time lapse so that I'm not taking up too much of your time, but so that you can still watch me weed this. So hold on one second. Okay guys, so I have weeded the first sheet of this transfer, and if you were paying attention earlier, I actually had two examples right here in the R and right here in the block outline where the vinyl did not cut 100% the whole way through, so I was able to catch it early enough and use an X-Acto knife to cut it through completely. So I usually at this point will flip the transfer over and take a look at it and just make sure that I haven't missed any spots. Believe it or not, there will be times, the more you make, the bigger of a rush you're in, when it's late at night and you're tired, you will miss sometimes weeding some of these spots in letters. So I always like to flip it over, make sure everything's spelled correctly, make sure that I've weeded everything that I should, and then I move forward. And I honestly do this again, I think once I'm at the heat press. I do it several times in the process, so that way I'm certain that I haven't made a mistake. So I'm going to go ahead and weed the other ones, and then we're going to press these and I will show you the finished product. Thanks. Okay guys, here we are. We're on the final stages of putting our heat transfer vinyl onto an actual shirt. So I'm doing 3 t-shirts. The first one is a 2X. It's the largest of the bunch. And when I place them on here, I measure the sides and the front that's overhanging to ensure that it's placed on here equally and it's going to be as straight as I can possibly get it. So I press all of my shirts for about 4 seconds to get the wrinkles out and to get some of the steam out of there. I am now taking the heat transfer that we cut and placing it on the shirt. Now, some things you can eyeball, but 99.9% of the time, I use my T here to line things up so that, again, I am getting everything as straight as I possibly can. And you will find sometimes you get lucky and it's on there like perfectly. And then other times you have to adjust it a little bit. So this one, I want it a little bit lower. Okay, so that one looks good. I have it placed on there where I like it, and I use my protective sheet on everything. And the type of heat transfer vinyl that I'm using, I've heard it pronounced Caesar or Sizer, easy weed vinyl. I'm just going to call it Sizer for the heck of it. It is to be pressed at 305 degrees for 15 seconds. That's the instructions that come from the company. So I pressed that the first time. This clear piece that I'm peeling off here, that is the shimmery glossy coat that we were talking about when we were cutting the vinyl. Whenever I said that is your carrier sheet, that is what is placed between the vinyl and the heat press. This carries the vinyl over so that, if you didn't have this, this would just completely be falling apart. You'd be placing just little incredibly flimsy letters on here. So this allows that to stay in place in the design that you cut until it's heat applied to the shirt. So I pressed it once. That was again at 305 degrees for 15 seconds. I always do a second press on my items after you remove that sheet. And I do that because I want my items to be adhered well. And typically a good sign of that with the Easy Weed vinyl is when you look at the vinyl after it's been on the shirt, you can actually kind of see a little bit of the texture of the shirt coming through the vinyl. And that to me says that it's been adhered well. And you can see that with this. I'm going to pick you up just a little bit so that you can see. Can you see here on these letters, you can see kind of the texture of the t-shirt coming through. That to me means that that vinyl has adhered well. So that is it basically, folks. I have 2 more of these shirts to press. I just kind of wanted to show you quickly the process that I use for this particular kind of vinyl with this design. It's easy. It takes a little bit of practice at first, but it's a great way to make t-shirts.